Welcome to Happily Ever Aftermath,
the podcast where we discuss relationships in movies and our relationships with them.
I'm Polina Grunbaum.
And I'm Diana Rojek-Sconard. Hello and welcome back.
Hello.
If my calculations are correct, happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day.
And welcome to our special Valentine's Day episode.
Yep.
That just happened to line up with the timing, and I decided, let's do it.
I'm excited.
No, okay. Well, don't get too excited. It's Secretary.
I'll try to contain my excitement in a PG-13 way.
Why? Secretary's rated R.
Ooh, okay, then I won't.
Oh, okay. Okay. So, Secretary, this was my choice, despite Polina's enthusiasm for it. The plot of Secretary, I got this from Fandango. Thank you very much, Google. Lee Holloway, Maggie Gyllenhaal, a young woman with a history of severe emotional problems, is released into the care of her overbearing parents following a stay at a mental institution. She finds work as a secretary for a rigid and demanding attorney, E. Edward Gray, James Spader, and starts dating the kind but dull Peter, Jeremy Davies. However, Lee soon realizes she's turned on by Gray's stern demeanor and begins a sadomasochistic relationship with him. So romantic.
It is so romantic.
Well,
which pretty much is how kind of probably a Valentine's Day, but that's it for another podcast.
So what's kind of interesting about this is this was my choice. This movie came out in 2002. I probably saw it around 2003. It came out on DVD. I don't know exactly how it happened, but I follow movies. I hear reviews. I hear about awards. I hear critics, what have you. This kind of came on my radar, and I thought, oh, I've heard good things about this movie, and I watched it. I was still living with my parents, so I was probably like 20 years old.
Okay.
And I watched it by myself, and it was just odd and confusing, but I know I really liked it. And then I just remember not too long afterwards, I think I probably still had the rental. I told my friend to see it. And don't ask me how the circumstances came into play, but I went to go have dinner with my family. I left her in my room. She watched the movie. And after I suggested it, I said in my brain, what the hell is wrong with me? What does this say about me that I really like this movie? Oh my God, what have I done?
Why have I left my friend alone with this movie?
Yes.
That's how I pretty much feel almost all my picks.
And so
I couldn't sympathize.
And so afterwards, she's like, well, it's a really good movie. I'm like, oh, thank God.
Oh, God. Yeah, because that could go one of two ways.
Like, we can't be friends anymore.
You're freaking me out.
Are you coming on to me?
Yeah. Like, did you leave this like, oh, it's a good movie. Not a suggestion of what our relationship should become.
Well, that's where I also get into the realm of like, I like it. I enjoy it. Good movie. No, that's not for me to decide.
Well, it's a good movie.
But this is a good movie.
Yeah, this is a good movie.
This is a good movie, but proceed with caution.
Yes.
And as always, we're going to get into the spoilers, assuming that we can actually get into the spoilers because we talk about so much stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
So
we may not even get to the...
So my relationship with it, if we just want to get right down to it.
Let's do it.
Okay. 20 years old. So I said it before, I'll say it again. Late bloomer.
Yeah.
I have married my first boyfriend. And we had been, if I was 20, we had been going out for a year and a half and stuff like that. So it didn't get me started on, the specifics of a sadomasochistic relationship or something like that. I was just like, oh my God, you got a boyfriend. This is really cute. My boyfriend, not the movie.
Yeah.
So what's happening in my life at this point, and for the listeners at home, I'm bright red right now because we don't talk. Okay, so also I have family members who listen to this podcast.
Yeah.
Also, my boss now listens to this podcast.
My coworkers listen to this podcast.
What's up, Jerry? So it's I don't like to reveal too much, but I'm still also going to try to keep talking here. So let me give you this version of it then. I hate confrontation. So watching just any of this confrontation in this movie, even if it's meant to be in a sexual context, well, I don't like confrontation. this is uncomfortable. Oh, and it's sexy times.
Yeah.
I don't know.
God,
this has all the things going against it for me.
That's the thing that really surprised me when you said that you wanted to do this movie.
Okay.
And I totally sympathize with you, by the way, because that was the hardest thing about talking about Purple Rain that way. Because I'm basically like, I am talking about, my suburban 13-year-old sexual awakening. Like that's tricky.
Nobody said anything about my sexual awakening. Please don't infer.
No, but
this is a disclaimer for my family members and various people that I know.
You've never had.
Also, I think my best friend's starting to listen as well.
Uh-oh.
Hi. She knows about my non-sexual awakenings. Go on.
But it's difficult. And this movie actually has a lot to like. It has some parallels with Purple Rain. There's a lot of purple in the movie.
I don't remember seeing a lot of purple. I remember reading in the trivia there was a lot of natural colors. It was the purple in the artificiality outside the office.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
There's actually there's a lot of purple in this movie.
I missed it.
There's a lot of saturated colors.
Okay, so putting a pin in the sexuality of it. For a second. I will be talking about the sympathy of Lee. Mm-hmm. Now, granted, she is coming out of a mental institution because she cuts herself. Mm-hmm. I am able to see a confused, fragile person trying to figure out themselves.
And their place in the world and how they can be
their place
useful.
In the world, how they interact with people, because her relationships with her parents, her father is an alcoholic who she witnesses pushing around and abusing her mother. Her sister is, she got out of the institution to see her sister get married to a guy who has just like, he's Blandy McBlanderson. I don't really see him.
I literally actually don't remember him. Right. Like not even his face. Like I can't actually see his face.
That's fine. But
that's how bland he is.
Well, yeah, he's just generic person whom it's I can make an assumption that sister married to get out of the house. Yeah. But literally into like the pool house. She's still living with there, but it's like I get to live my life, but they're not financially ready. So people are just that's her tiny window. She has Jeremy Davies' character Peter is somebody that she knows from high school. And I will point out that I'm not sure about the timeline of how, like they knew each other in high school. Peter, you're not the same person we were in high school, but we don't know how far out of high school they are. So in fact, before we got started recording, Polina and I were just like, well, how old is she?
Yeah. And how old is he?
How old, well, how old is James Spader? But Peter and Lee, they're contemporaries. Yeah. They went to high school together. So they're within a couple of age year thing, but they're out of high school, but he works at JCPenney. So he's they're maybe 20.
Yeah. I'm going to say that. That makes sense, right?
Like, but in my head, that's the same age as me. Yeah. But in my head, for some reason, they're just like, 26, older than me, not my age.
Oh, interesting.
I made them older because I imagine Maggie Gyllenhaal was probably 26 when she filmed this.
She might have been.
Older. And when you're younger, and I'm also finding this out talking to more people. For me, when you're older, you're instantly smarter. You're more educated, which is not the same thing. You're wiser. You're also more worthy of respect because I have so much I can learn from you.
Thank you.
And as that was the universal you, Polina.
Damn.
That was the
one day.
No, I have a lot to learn from you. But people also make note. Learning from people can also mean cautionary tales.
Yes. Yeah.
Wah, wah. Yeah. So that being said, she's in this kind of relationship with Peter. She goes to community college. So, maybe I'm right in the age range. She takes a typing course.
But it's just interesting that you thought she was older. Yeah. No, that's a really interesting detail.
It also might be the older version of me trying to make the age difference between Lee and Mr. Gray less creepy,
maybe,
in my own mathematical perspective.
But also just the idea of her.
All right, so Lee gets a job because she's an amazing typist. She can type very well. She gets a job as a secretary for E. Edward Gray, James Spader, and we will get to the 50 Shades conversation a little bit later on. But
I'll put a pin in that.
So damn pins.
Sorry,
gonna turn into a voodoo doll if we're not careful. So she's typing and she gets this job, and you have James Spader, and they do so much with no dialogue.
Oh my God.
They have
That's what's great about this.
photos of the women he's had relationships with in the past, and there's so much going on with the movie about how he, I didn't put this together until I thought about rewatching this movie for the podcast. He makes them use typewriters, not computers.
And
because typewriters, you can't fix so easily. Computers, you have spell check and all this other stuff. There's so many ways of control. It is a typewriter. And not just the whole do this for me and make 4 copies of this. It's only typewriters, only this, only that, do this. And I'm just like, that the typewriter situation was a wonderful way of controlling and creating
and the
more
sound and creating the sound rhythm
and rhythms, and his red pen, which just I can't even begin to get into the visuals and the artistry and just all of this. And within the first few minutes, you see Lee in this scenario where she is shackled up. She has her arms across a bar in handcuffs, where she's stapling things and she's moving things and she's getting something that she typed over and she's grabbing a cup of coffee. And it's very, okay, go ahead. It's very sexy.
It's and she's wearing this like short
skirt.
I mean, it's not that short. It's actually like
this very nice outfit that you think of the buxom secretary. Yeah. And after the first 5 minutes, it was, dear God, what have I done? But again, we're watching this and we're going to talk about this. What have I done?
Yeah, I can understand that.
Yeah. So
the look on her face though. This is Maggie Gyllenhaal.
Yes.
No, I can't imagine anybody better.
Jake Gyllenhaal.
A totally different movie.
Oh, I thought we were just talking about people.
It's just naming Gyllenhaals. Let's just name Gyllenhaals.
I know there's more, but I'm not playing this game anymore.
Her, like, you see the shot of her and it's shocking, right? Mm-hmm. But it's also so sumptuous and beautiful because there's all of these textures, and it's in that waiting room is these deep purples, and you see her in black and white. It's very stark, and and then she turns to you, and just the look on her face, you're like, oh, like, because for a minute you're like, is it okay that this is kind of looks sexy? And then you see the look on her face, and you're like, oh, yeah, it's okay.
Well, also, she's really good at maneuvering, despite the fact that she's shackled.
Yeah, and she has this, she has this great, like, cat who ate the canary smile on her face.
Yeah, you're right.
You know, this, like, half smile that she does so well in this whole thing. I mean, like, watching her facial expressions during, like, there are 5-minute scenes of just her face doing, like, just going through a process.
Yeah, like I said, there's so much going on with no dialogue.
Yeah.
Or even, so there were certain parts, again, because my very timid self kicked in. I'm watching this movie, and it's just me and my husband in the area, and he's not watching with me, but things are happening. So I'm like, I have to turn this down. And then I can't hear because Mr. Gray's character is so quiet in the way he speaks to her. So I'm like, damn it, I missed the dialogue. I had to back it up and turn it back up again, and then turn it down really, really quickly before the loudness kicked in. Like I'm waiting for a car chase to stop, but instead it's spanking sounds.
Yeah.
So
like, oh.
So again, I'm just kind of like gripping myself. No, God, not like stop, people. Yeah. No, I'm tense. I'm tense right now. I find myself.
Your shoulders are gripping your ears.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
Weird. All right. Yes, I know what you mean now. Yeah. Okay. It's, again, talking about this because this movie is rooted in sensuality and sexuality in a topic that's considered, well, back, 15 years ago, we didn't talk about it as much, but now we have the 50 Shades movies to where it's just like, sexual liberation, but not really.
Yeah,
it's just
I have
like
a lot of issues with those. We'll get to that.
Well, no, it's not even, no, fine. People being sexual liberated, that's fine. I'm just, but why do I need to know about your sexual liberation. I'm fine if you're sexually liberated.
Like, good for you.
Just don't talk to why do I need to say good for you? I don't need to know this, and you don't need to know about me. So let's move on with our lives, type of thing. So okay, let's just do that. The 50 Shades.
All right.
Certain things to point out, and I don't want to ignore it. As much as I enjoy this movie, having more access to information about the BDSM community. Dan Savage wrote an article making reference to a different article written by Erika Moen. And Dan Savage's article is the one that I wrote. It's basically just like, is 50 Shades of Grey better at tackling BDSM than Secretary? Because the whole idea, Dan's point, is Secretary is considered the thumbs up, BDSM movie, where 50 Shades of Grey is just blah, that's horrible, and how dare they, and all this other stuff, and so many problems, and all this other stuff. And what he makes reference to, Erika Moen's article is a lot longer, so that's why I didn't get into it, but I also want to reference that she was the one who did it. She points out that in Secretary, there's no stated consent, there's no aftercare, there's no, there's bits and pieces of just how in this community it is a relationship. Now,
the best practices.
So there it is.
I think that it's what they when you read this article.
Yes.
It seemed like if you're talking about the best practices of BDSM, like very, very clear boundaries and rules, like in 50 Shades of Grey, it's like basically a very long contract negotiation. The first one,
it's boring as hell.
It's so boring. I mean, the whole movie is boring, but for me, I just not a fan.
No, the contract negotiation scene.
Yeah, the contract. Well, yes. And as you said, aftercare. There's safe words. There's a constant asking if this is okay. All that in Secretary is very much implied.
All of it is implied.
Yeah, it's all very much in her face, and it's like, and there's little ways, and they're all very nonverbal, and therefore, this is not a manual. As much as maybe 50 Shades of Grey may be better at that sort of thing. But I feel like the thing that Secretary does so well and is that it captures, there's an emotional reality of the emotional reality of finding a way to express yourself and deal with things through sex that is safe. Like, where, sort of, it's just rare that there's a movie that it talks about sex in a way that relates back to like the rest of your life. Even though obviously I'm not really gonna live it's a farce, right? I mean, it's not a realistic film. They don't set up. I mean, even if they don't set up realism, like the Mary Gaitskill story on which this is based is much more a realistic story.
Yeah, that's why I don't care.
Yeah, it's actually not my favorite Mary Gaitskill movie, and it's sort of short story.
Also, something important to point out in the article is the fact that he is her boss, so her livelihood is dependent on him. Yeah. There's the power dynamic of he controls her ability to financially support herself. And that was something that also came up. Yes,
it's really not a manual and not a way that people should be. And I really worried that rewatching it, like especially these days when this is something, I'm a lot older. I've had more work experience. When I saw this movie, I saw it in the theater when it came out. It is the colors, the way, they kind of set it up that it's not, realism. It's not a realistic movie.
And in fact, if you read all the information, as I was mentioning before, the colors on the outside of the office, everything is very natural. That was a deliberate choice of the filmmakers, whereas everything out there looked plastic and artificial.
Yeah, there's a weird lavender that isn't found, like in her parents' house, that isn't really found in nature. All of her clothes before she...
Oh, she was the I love this. It's the montage that I love, but it's the subtle version of cleaning yourself up after a while, because she's got the long just kind of skirts. She basically dresses like me now in the beginning, where she has these like boot things with a skirt that looks kind of funky, and then like the sweater that she just want to keep
Not
picking.
good funky, like sort of like
frumpy. We'll go
frumpy.
with, not funky, but frumpy.
Yeah.
So that she has
Funky
that.
fitting.
And then I have my solid colors on top, and she has like the sweaters and everything like that. And it's just, this is all the basic elements of what you should wear to work thrown together, but not very well.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then eventually back to the beginning sequence, because the beginning, before we were talking about with the shackles and the way that she was moving very sensuously through the office, is it goes through, which sets you up for what you're about to see. But then it says 6 months earlier, and then you see frumply.
Yeah, and you
So-
see her, the way that she holds herself. Like when you see her 6 months ago, you see she just folded in within herself always. Like her body is kind of curved in a C shape all the time.
Yeah, this movie is full of body language.
Yeah.
Yeah. So so she is a nervous creature, but let's talk about Mr. Gray.
Shall we?
Okay. So E. Edward Gray, I don't think we ever find out what his first name actually is. But that's okay. Yeah.
We do find out where he was born.
Des Moines, Iowa.
Des Moines, Iowa.
Yeah.
Never has Des Moines, Iowa had such emotional, erotic impact.
I apologize to Des Moines, Iowa.
Doesn't seem so bad.
Well, no, I mean, they got their own sensuality that they.
I'm sure they
where
do.
Am I going
You're right.
with this?
Yeah.
Never mind.
I started it. My fault.
Yeah, and I'm squashing it. Okay. So you actually don't know too much about him, and that's by design of the movie, I assume, and it's very effective. He's in the very beginning. You see him throwing the red pens away, and just he's very secretive. And the first question out of his mouth is, "Are you pregnant?" In her interview, "Are you pregnant? Are you going to become pregnant?" And I'm just like, "You're a lawyer. This is not great." But
I thought that was in the second interview, but no.
No, he does it twice.
He does do it twice. Yeah. Okay.
So he interviews her, "Are you pregnant?" and asks her all these horrible questions, and
that are totally illegal, by the way.
Well,
like actually illegal.
As a lawyer, he knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
So I think that's pretty interesting. But also him asking in the first place is, "Oh, you're just quietly squeaking your answers, aren't you? This has potential." You know, he's sizing her up in more ways than one.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting. And just, again, I want to throw out there is what they're putting in this movie, not great, not, good practices of...
They're not best practices.
Of the world.
No,
not
of
even,
anything really.
Not even the BDSM community.
No.
But what I'm able to just kind of isolate into, like, James Bond shooting scope style is you have James Spader, who is a person internalizing so much,
and he's really OCD.
He's incredibly OCD.
Frustrated by
he's
it.
Frustrated. He has so much shame.
So yeah, and he's got he's terrified of his ex-wife, who comes in at one point. That he literally hides.
He's terrified of his own sexual proclivities.
Yeah,
and you see the more he becomes intrigued by Lee's submissiveness, you see him doing push-ups and sit-ups and working out all of that sexual energy just through that. And it's kind of amazing to watch. Again, no words whatsoever. It's just in his expressions and in his actions. And then he'll come in and he'll do this dominant song and dance. But as the movie progresses and you see Lee becoming more confident with herself and more able to do these things, to answer to his beck and call, you see him just kind of slowly leaning across the wall and staring at her, and then just coming back really quickly because he there's so much he wants to do, so much he wants to say, but he has to keep it to himself because I'm using her big air quotes right now, because I am a monster and this needs to stop, but I can't stop.
Also, I feel like she just, to be vulnerable to another person.
Yeah. And
Even, and that comes out at the end too, like basically, to let another person get to know him is something he's obviously so terrified of. But it's also that there's so much in the movie about, basically it's all about her. Like, someone is paying attention to her and has actually, like, if you look at the people that she has the most
the closest
kind of intimacy with, it's her therapist.
Oh, right.
Who like her therapist, and also Mr. Gray, because Mr. Gray sees her. He sees her cutting.
Oh, no, he actually, yeah. Oh, yes. Okay.
Yeah. He sees her preparing to cut. And so there's kind of and everyone else in the family has such pain. And it's, even the scenes with her high school boyfriend, or not her high school boyfriend, but the guy.
Boyfriend from high school that she's also dating.
Yeah.
Now. Peter.
Peter. He doesn't really see her as well. He does a little bit more because he also went through, they connected because they both have mental health issues and they were both hospitalized.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Okay. I remember him saying, she said, Peter, you're so different from high school. What happened? And he said, I had a nervous breakdown.
Yeah.
Now, do we know for sure that means he was also institutionalized? Because certain people in a very young age say cavalier things like, I had a nervous breakdown.
It was so obvious that he's like super damaged to me.
There's a difference between obvious. I'm just double checking. Was there anything in the movie that, that stated definitively
that he was institutionalized? I don't know, but the way his parents were talking, his sort of nervous habits, like, I don't know. I definitely...
Because I'll say that I didn't get that.
Oh, interesting.
But I took that
now I want to rewatch it.
Right. So, well, you're welcome then.
Yes.
No, I took that as cavalier conversation. What happened to you? Oh, I had a nervous breakdown. I took it that way because...
Really interesting.
I did.
Oh, that's so interesting, because to me, that's like, they're kind of each other's, like, it's another one. She's trying to find people. She's trying to feel.
Yes.
Real things, and she's trying to find real people to connect with, where her family is.
And I'll tell you that at that similar age, hearing her say that and her trying to connect and feel, you hear one person say something and then you're just like, you immediately grab onto that, like, yeah, me too.
Totally.
And then
you find out, like, no,
that's not what they meant.
Yeah.
Oh, I can tell you in high school, no, in college, when I was trying to find people to live with, I'm just like, oh yeah, no, I'm totally a messy person. Turns out my messy person is not the same as when they say they're a messy person.
Oh, yeah.
So there's that. So there it is, me showing my now let's get a little bit more detail oriented with this, please, side of myself. So
yeah, but that's, I mean,
no, mine's Mr. Gray OCD.
Yeah. So I think
maybe that's why I like Mr. Gray. Oh,
that's funny. Sorry.
No, I was about to say he does really like a clean, well set up everything.
Yes.
Okay.
He really does. Like, because remember in
Hold
the
on,
end,
I'm having an awakening right now.
Oh,
You
okay.
talk.
All right. At the end, so at one point he throws away all the red pens, which is kind of their sign of,
because she also, she throws away her kit, her sewing kit with all the cutting tools that she has as well. Go ahead.
Well, that's kind of the magic thing, is like, so she goes, he shows her another way to, I mean, to me, that's kind of the crux of it, when she realizes, like, oh, there's this other way to express, to express or to deal with this, like, all this pain, like, when it comes up, and to release this pain.
Mm-hmm.
And it's health, quote unquote, healthier. And I think, and then she gives, and then her father ends up in the hospital. And she goes to him and she's like, she tries to ask him something, like basically like, I need, like, this is when I would be cutting and you introduced me to a thing. So you need like, this is the time that we do this. And he goes through this whole thing where he's like, oh God, this is not in the office. This is in my home. This makes it very different and too real and too much.
I'd like to back up a step.
Okay.
So Lee has a situation. Her father is, from what we can tell, an alcoholic. He ends up in the hospital, and that's kind of a family problem. And so Lee goes to the hospital with her mom and her sister. And so in this moment where Lee is having emotional problems, as you were stating, she wants to cut. But she doesn't have her tools anymore because she's been introduced to this new scenario where Mr. Gray said, you're not going to do that anymore, as part of their dynamic. But at the same time, because this relationship is being created, she doesn't have this outlet to express her pain anymore. So she throws her kid away. When her father's in the hospital, she goes to... I don't want to call him Mr. Gray. His middle name is Edward. I'm just going to call him Edward. She goes... No, damn it. She goes to Edward Gray's house. He's running on a treadmill. And the part you were saying that I want to get a little bit more detail about is she wants to talk to him about that. And the thing is,
really? Do you think she wants to talk to him?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. No, she wants to go to him for the comfort. She wants to say, my father's in the hospital and I want to cut, but I can't. Help me. It's basically, I'm having a problem, but when I have these, she wants him. She wants someone to confide in or someone to be with, to help. She wants help. And she went to him because he has helped her. And what you were saying is that he was having a reaction, but she never says anything. No. And she doesn't give him the opportunity to because they're outside of the office. She reverts back into the whole, I wanted to make sure you were prepared for that meeting. Yeah. I don't he sees that she's there and she's like, what's happening right now? So I think she reads that and that's why she reverts back into it. So I wasn't exactly following the way you were talking about that. I didn't see him panic.
Oh, I
saw him question it, but I didn't see him panic. I saw her retreat and all this other stuff. So that was like the first like where this is starting to take its like, for a while it's good, for the relationship is working, but now it's like not working anymore. And that was like the decline.
That's funny because I didn't think she went to him to talk.
Well, I don't know if talk is the word, but for their version,
I think she wanted a scene.
When you say,
I don't mean like an emotional scene. I mean, she wanted a...
No. I don't want to say talk. I want to say she went for the comfort, be it the comfort that they know how the scenario. I can't even explain it because I don't know how it works.
I think it would, I mean, and I don't know if she knew, but she's like, I mean, I think you probably hit it. Like,
she went to him for a reason, and that reason was, I'm going through a difficult time, therefore I have these emotions and I need to find a healthy outlet to release them. That could be talking, that could be spanking, that could be getting coffee.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, because like before, you know, he tells her what to eat. He makes up all these games for her, right? And one of them is telling him what to eat.
Telling her what to eat.
And it's clear, like to me, I've read that as like one of the things that makes her so anxious is that dinner. Like whenever you see the family having dinner, it's so sad. And they just, everyone is like not really talking, and just there's so much pain and so much unsaid. And so clearly it's a hard time for her. And there we are. He has given it away to make that okay, because they have this game that they play about what she eats.
And I find it kind of interesting that she comes from a situation of not talking and not expressing. Therefore, when she sees it in him, she knows what's happening and is better equipped to say.
Oh, that's a really good point.
Which I think is kind of fun. And one of the things that is kind of important. So we're not doing a great job of giving this movie the justice it deserves. No. So there is a great podcast called Not Porn. And when you Google it, make sure you Google Not Porn Podcast, because you're not going to find much if you just Google Not Porn. And they did a really great episode about BDSM and the movie Secretary. And there was another one, Venus in Furs.
Yeah.
That's
which I actually haven't seen. It's kind of on my list.
It's episode 21, S&M's, Doms and Subs, Secretary, and Venus in Fur.
Yeah.
And I wholeheartedly recommend you listen to them because...
And they talk a lot. They're a little more comfortable talking about the sex part of the Secretary than probably we are.
Yes. So you came here for the relationship aspect of the movie. So we're going to get right back into that.
To the sex. Go to the Not Porn Podcast.
Yes. Go away from me when you want to talk about sex. So I'm becoming more comfortable because we're not going to talk about this much longer. So
you did pick this movie. You did this to yourself.
Have I turned into a kind of a bright pink now?
You are. Yeah,
have I gone from red to pink?
It's like you're kind of watching you in the episode is sort of like you're kind of one of those paint chip swatches, you know, when like they go from one to the shade next, and they just keep getting darker and darker.
And the way, well, no, I'm hopefully moving the other way. and never mind. Doesn't make a difference anymore. All right.
It's flipping the paint swatch.
So, when did they fall in love? I haven't.
It's your movie.
I know it's my movie, and I'll tell you when she fell in love with him. It's the moment she told him, the moment he fired her, and she slapped him across the face.
Mm-hmm.
That was the
moment. That was such a great moment.
Well, that's not the moment she fell in love with him. That's the movie she realized she was in love with him because she snapped and realized that this dynamic is just more than that. And the fact that he was doing that kind of hurt to her, she realizes how much she is connected to him, and smack right there, right in the face.
Like, you're not
go
allowed
see
to
this
do
movie.
This.
I'm sorry, people. If you're here and you've never seen this movie before, we've officially ruined it. So
why do you think we ruined it?
Because you need to go see this movie.
Everyone should go see this movie. It's
no. If you're at this point in the podcast and you haven't seen it yet, I ruined it for you. Go see it now.
I think if you care about such things, then probably listening to a podcast of a movie that came out in 2002 and you're afraid of spoiling that movie, then you have to think about your choices. I think it was. I think that she fell in love with him when he said to her, when he said, you don't need to do this anymore with the cutting.
Oh.
I think when he saw her cut, actually, no, I think when he saw her, the look on his face when he saw her cut, that was not disgust, but understanding.
Oh, wow.
When that passed between them, and when he presented this idea, because one thing I thought was really great is like at one point when she kind of go like, she's like, okay, we're not going to have a relationship, like it's not going to work. She actually starts like shopping around. She like realizes that she
you mean
dominant and submissive.
Oh,
Yeah.
you mean so after he fires her?
I think no, he doesn't fire her. They stop playing these games. They stop. Like she puts in a request specifically for she puts a request in specifically like a typo in specifically.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry.
And then she realized like he won't play. And I think and then she starts doing the thing where she starts answering ads in the newspaper for
that was after she
submissive.
got fired. That was after he fired her.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, but at some point, and I thought,
so when she starts making typos intentionally, and he's not,
and it's
responding.
Like, oh wait, we're not. This is not a relationship, and like this isn't. Obviously, it's not a relationship anymore. But I think that like that's so. I think that's when she falls in love with him, is when she sees her. When she sees that he, wants to, that he actually sees her and he understands why she's doing it. And I think and then when he actually is like, you're not going to do that anymore. Mm-hmm. Right. And like that he recognizes that she needs somebody to say that, and that she needs specifically him to say that. Okay. Because obviously her mother has put away all the knives. at some point, like obviously not like the people in the mental institution were like, hey, you should probably just continue cutting yourself. It was like, there's definitely, she's heard this before, but this is the person that she's really ready to hear it from. And she talks about how, and then he says, go for a walk. Mm-hmm. And she goes for a walk, and she said, because he gave me permission to do this, I feel like he's with me on this walk. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's such a being in love thing, that you're like, even if you're not with them, you can kind of feel like they're with you.
Yes, that can sound so beautiful. But
and so creepy.
Well, yeah, that's
obviously. I mean, this is the hardest thing in this. I mean, I
want to put a disclaimer on every single one of these sentences, because you say it, with a certain tone. This is how it feels when you're in love with somebody. But if you tell the exact same story to another person, no, this is what happens when you're in an abusive, controlling, emotionally abusive relationship. Physically,
yeah. But I mean,
I'm gonna get this right off the out. Okay, I should have said this earlier. For the record, for anyone experiencing abuse or cutting or anything, please find a trusted therapist. Do not enter into a sadomasochistic relationship with your boss in the hope that they will help you overcome your emotional / mental illnesses.
Well, I think that's why this movie couldn't function, would be much more difficult to watch if it wasn't obviously sort of a kind of emotional speculative fiction, right?
It's also not
because the
emotional.
Colors are, like they set up a farcical world that is not, just outside of real.
See, one of the problems that I have with that, it's these words. I'm concerned that they're so loaded, because you say farcical, and I think.
Yeah, you're right. Maybe farce is not a great word. I don't really know what a good word is.
Well, exactly. Under the tags for this movie, so like a black comedy, I'm like, I'm sorry, black what? Comedy?
I mean, some of these things is this is the other thing. It's actually very funny. Like there's lots of really great little visual gags.
Visual, yes, but so much of it's because it's so poignant, and all these other words I can't come up with right now, because no words. I can't come up with good words to describe this movie or how I feel about this movie. I just know that watching a woman blossom,
yes,
emotionally and having maturity, be it sexually or not, has an impact, especially when a younger version of me was watching it, and watching it again now, because I think of how much progress I've made in the last 10 or 15 years. Looking at James Spader's character, Edward Grey, and the nervousness, and watching the fact that even though he's the one with the power in the end, he's the one that needs her to point out how he is failing or how he is broken. And she's able to say, you can be this person. What you are is not horrible.
You're not a monster.
You're not a monster. And also his words to her, we can't do this all the time. And she doesn't even blink and say, why not? She's not wrong.
No.
She's not wrong. There's so much there. And I'll give you this piece that when he fires her, they have their fight. He sits down, and you see him, and he's kind of like in a half fetal position as he's trying to fire her. And she just walks up to him and just runs her fingers through his hair.
And he closes his eyes.
Yeah.
And melts into her hand. Like his whole body moves toward her.
Yeah. And then he hands her a severance check and tells her to get out.
Much, yeah. And I think, and well, because if you notice, like at the end, she goes from not really knowing what she wants and feeling, and
for the record, that's when I think he fell in love with her. But he still thought that he had to let her go because his feelings about himself overrode the fact that he thought he was a monster.
Yeah, I can see that. Okay. I think
I had to get that in there because that's what
you're right. You're right. We went in. I think I think what's the blossoming thing is really powerful, because you watch a woman somebody go from like go to a place where she can ask for what she wants, and she's clear and specific. And if someone doesn't give it to her, it's not about her. It's not because she did something wrong. It's she's finally like, she's really firm in her own truth.
Okay.
And her emotional truth, and validated by it. Like, and I think that's why that's why it's powerful.
I also think that what's important is she didn't come into this movie as, I want to be in this type of like physical relationship. Instead, and this is, going back to Dan Savage, sexual compatibility. He refers to this as good giving and game. Yeah. So this wasn't even something that was on her radar, being in a dominant submissive relationship. And she actually reads a book on tape where she's learning about it. Yeah. And the fact that it's just like, wow, this is a new and interesting concept. I'm going to look into this. And it's the fact that it's, enhancing something, and she's into it. Good for her.
Yeah. And she's like, oh, wait, okay, I'm going to research all the ways that make this work. Or like really work.
Or let's look into this a little bit more, because this is something that not at the time, but my significant other is interested in. So let's, take a look at the situation.
Because I felt like the minute it happened, she was like, oh, here we are. Oh, okay.
Well, it isn't so much, this is what I've been looking for. It's this works. Not this specifically is the answer. Because I think, she's going to need more than just this relationship to get healthy in the whole thing. I mean, it does paint this very bright picture. In your words, we can't figure out to describe this movie: farcical, dark comedy, what have you. So it's part of it, and it's interesting. But it's, again, I shake my head at so much of it, and even as I try to explain it, I still can't explain it, but I know when I watch it, I enjoy it. Oh my God, it's like porn itself. I can't describe it, but I know what it is when I see it.
It is when I see it. I think the parts that are hard to watch are sort of hard to watch for a reason. Okay. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't think that they're not like comparing this, we're talking, last episode we talked about Purple Rain, and I was having a very difficult time watching, basically like certainly a woman getting thrown in a dumpster. A woman
Lee voluntarily goes into
oh my God,
a dumpster.
I was totally thinking that. I was like, there's too much. But I guess like, to me, that's hard to watch in a different way. This is hard to watch because it also very much, like, sex is one of those weird things where time really stands still, and things, you're like, oh, it's been, like, it feels like it's been a very, when you're in it, it feels like it's taking a lot longer than it actually is.
There is that.
And I think, all jokes aside, there's like a million jokes you can make on that, but I'm going to move past those. But this movie does such a good job of capturing that sense that you slow down and you watch every single thing that's happening in the frame and the sound and everything. And it does such a good job of capturing that about sex. And there's like, like one of the few female masturbation scenes that like is really on TV, where you see somebody climax and there's no one else there.
Well, for the record, it's not on TV.
Sorry, on TV, on movie.
On a TV, yes.
On a TV near you or any other device.
For the record, there are 2 masturbation scenes.
That's true.
Yeah.
No, I meant her, like a female, like her coming. There's actually several. You're right.
For the record, there are 2 female masturbation scenes, and there's one of. Be really careful. Like, do your research before you watch this movie. Be not prudish like me before you watch this movie. Don't watch this movie with your parents.
No, don't watch this movie with your parents.
Or watch it.
Weirdly, my dad is really likes this movie.
Or have a healthy relationship with people when you watch this movie. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know how to say it, but I like this movie.
I think I wish I could remember the interviewers. I think she's from the Seattle Times, but she said this is not a movie for everyone, but if you are into this type of movie, or if you're,
you still,
it's still
if
like
you're into this kind of thing.
To be fair, okay, so this to me is totally like Polina movie bait, because it's, I like movies where I have to pay extremely close attention to like where it captures the like nuance of human interaction.
I really wish I could come up with a joke movie right now.
I know you could.
Damn it!
I was trying to be serious. This is what happens every time I try to be serious. No, but okay, we should. So let's get to
what happens next.
What happens next for them?
Well, in the spirit of this movie and the fact that nothing really large is happening, but is all isolated into this tiny community of people and these two individuals. In the movie, when the movie's over, Lee is actually engaged to Peter, but she actually runs off in a wedding dress fitting and goes to inadvertently puts herself in a situation that has it so she gets to come back together with Mr. Gray, but she's in the wedding dress.
Yeah.
And so
and then suddenly the community like rallies around her.
Yeah, that was kind of weird. I didn't really fully get that, but that really paints the farcical as
that's the thing when it gets like kind of crazy.
So I think to answer the question of what happens next, they even stated, so they get married and they have a quick honeymoon because he needs to get back to work.
They both need to get back to work.
Did she say they both need to get back to work?
Yes.
Now, was that implying?
I don't know.
Oh, well, because at the end of the movie, he goes off to work and she waves from the front patio.
And she has this like that same cat who ate the canary grin.
Well, yes, see the end because she does something that is really, really kind of funny and works to the whole premise. But the whole idea is we settled into a nice, normal life together. And I think in the immediate, what happens afterwards is she returns the wedding dress to Peter's mother because she ran off with it on. And how dare that woman make a comment of just like, I guess I was a little lighter when I wore this thing.
God.
I don't care what your observations are. Do not call her fat.
Yes. Oh, certainly do not call
Maggie Gyllenhaal
fat.
Is not. Anyways. So because who cares? She returns the wedding dress with her not apologies, but she definitely got it dry cleaned.
Oh, yeah, let's hope so.
She got it. Well, let's just say that she paid for the dry cleaning bill and it went away. And I think she doesn't even apologize to Peter much in the same way that nothing much. It's just like, this is over. They just settle into life. There's nothing there, and I don't think there's anything there to really poke out in the long scheme of things. I don't think she needs to go back to school or become a paralegal or anything like that. I think it's just, oh my God, I'm actually going to say this, and they lived happily ever after.
I think they did.
Yeah.
Because I think they found it's so hard for both of them to find somebody.
I don't think that's the reason why. I think that because they do have each other, there's no reason to worry about that or even be concerned by that. Instead, they're just going to bask in one another.
I agree.
In relationship, significant other bound happiness. Because I don't want to say in holy matrimony or in wedded bliss, because that's just something that they did. Yeah. And it's something that they commented on. But I think that together, they're going to grow healthier.
Yes.
And together. And they've embraced this piece, but there's also so much more to come together with. And they're going to do it. The end.
I totally agree. I think that's the beauty of this. When I say that it's going to be so hard to find someone else that...
And then she opens up a BDSM shop.
Sorry. I think she's going to become like maybe a blogger and sex educator.
I don't even think it's going to go that far. I don't think she's going to incorporate that into a career or anything like that. I think it's just going to be them.
It's just going to be them.
It's just going to be them.
I think... because I think what's kind of beautiful is like when I say, oh, it's so hard for them to find somebody else, it's more that like, I don't think that they have this, their entire concept of relationship is that they will continue to get closer and closer and explore together, which is very, and they're, committed. Both of them have such a hard time really being themselves. They either are so scared of themselves or they don't know themselves. And they have found this person that is willing to explore all of those things with them. So I think they do live happily ever after.
The end.
The end.
It just seems like such a cop-out way to end the episode, but
No.
I think it just feels right. Much like the movie, I like this movie. This feels like they get a happily ever after.
I think they get a happily ever after.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, that being said, I would really appreciate any listeners who have thoughts on this movie, if they can help articulate it just a little bit better. If you know the movie, if you've seen the movie, if you can help us figure out what the hell it is that we were trying to say, and if you can do it better, please find us. We're contact@HEAMCast.com. We are on Twitter @HEAMCast, and we're on Facebook at Happily Ever Aftermath.
Yeah. And it's HEAMCast, HEAMCAST on Twitter.
That's
so
right.
Please, please just tell us.
Thank you to the Lady Pod Squad for being a
just fantastic
continuing beacon of support.
Yes, and great connections and great podcasts.
Yeah. And again,
interesting ideas.
To those on the Facebook page, thank you so much for your comments. And we keep bouncing back and forth on whether or not we want to start responding more than just on Facebook. But we're still trying to figure that out. We're
still kind of baby steps on how we do that.
We're a tiny operation of
2.
2.5. 2.5. We have a dog wandering about.
Yeah.
So thank you for listening.
Yeah. And join us next time. Take care.
Bye.
Bye. For our next episode, we will be joined by Elisa Lucas from Best Forevers, and we will be talking about Pretty in Pink, a special movie, a special guest. Don't miss it.